debt. So as we get older, a lot of people are downsizing. Get rid of this house that has a high, even if you pay the taxes yearly or the insurance. So you downsize. I know a lot of doctors now that are realizing we're in trouble, and they have sold their huge houses and have downsized. So that's something that, of course, sad to say, we're living in the end of time. So we're not going to have all that prosperities that our parents have. You know, a lot of people are going to be losing their job. We see the economy where 4 banks just closed in California. So we're living in a different time than when my parents lived.
Yes.
That they were able to manage money, live beyond their means, have their savings, and live comfortably. But it's a lifestyle.
That's it.
It's a lifestyle.
For a lot of immigrants coming in, they have survived on very little. So really, it doesn't take much for them to live. All right, we are online now, so I want to welcome all those that have joined us online for our Sabbath School study this week. And we are studying our lesson, which is called Giving Back. So welcome today to the Bellevue Seventh-day Adventist Church lesson study. Charlie.
You know, we all have our perspective and advice on what to give, but there's always a passage in the Bible I turn to once in a while, and it's from Paul. Sometimes he had some pretty good advice to give, you know, more often than not anyway. It's from 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 11 and 12, and I love this advice he gives. He says, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business and to work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. I love that advice.
Yes.
And that's solid advice for anyone looking to the future.
Right. Okay, so Brother Benz, you okay? You're okay. All right. So that's very good. So we should be looking ahead to retirement. We should be planning on retirement. However, if we don't make it, we should have plans in place just for that scenario also. So, it's just like living your daily lives. When you were growing up, I'm sure most of us had plans about what we were going to be when we grew up, where we were going to work, what we were going to do, etc., and that types of things. I've also seen people that have made that decision, and yet after a few years of doing what they thought they wanted to do the rest of their lives, they changed and decided, no, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do something else. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of growing to get where we are actually in a place where we feel comfortable that that's what we want to do the rest of our life. But even at that, even in our old age, sometimes we can change our focus on what we're doing. And that's the thing about life. It's always changing. It's never the same. And if we look at that in the aspect of our Christian experience, we never are at the same place in our life. We are constantly changing and growing. And so, as Christians, we need to look at that aspect of our life and say, okay, am I too comfortable where I'm at? And I think Sunday's lesson reaches that in this story of the rich. It's called the rich fool. Now, the Bible didn't call him a fool. But yet, when we look at the story, we think to ourselves, he was a fool. And if you look there in Luke 12, 16 to 21, it tells the story then of this man who was very rich, very productive. He had barns that were full of products, things that he was very good at. And then he has this fantastic year where he produces more than he has before, and he's got no place to store them. So, in this scenario, he tears down the old barns, builds bigger new barns, puts all of his stuff in, and then, the parable says, that very night, what? If you're a fool? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't see that in here.
Yes, it's mentioned.
Okay, all right. Okay. So, all right. So, he did all this, and then the very night he got it all done, what happened to him?
He died.
He died. There is so much in this little story of what is our relationship to the things we have on this earth as compared to our relationship to the things that we will have in the new earth. Which is more important? So where is the line drawn for us between meeting our needs and neglecting the needs of others?
Let me. we are online now, so if you talk out of the mic, the people who are watching don't hear.
The difference is how we spend our money.
Okay.
We don't need a $30,000 or $40,000 car. We can buy a less expensive car. We don't need a $300,000 home. We can buy a less expensive home, like Abraham. Abraham owned nothing.
Yeah.
But he had an abundance, and he gave. Job was looking for the cause, who to give. The purpose of us receiving is to give. But most people, when they get a raise, we need a bigger home. I got to change my car. They don't think of the poor single mother at church that does not have a car, or her car is broken. They just come to church, and that's everywhere, not just church, but even. So that's the purpose of money. We get ourselves in debt. And, I have a friend of mine she's my age. I mean, we're in our late 60s, and I'm saying, you're going to buy a $240,000 home. You're older now. You're not going to. And then what happened? She fell. She cracked her back, and now they're in trouble. Yeah. So, you plan ahead. So if you live under your means, you don't have to stress.
That's right.
And I learned that from my parents. I've always lived under my means, and God will bless you and give you He adds it on. But we try to get ourselves, and we get ourselves in trouble, and then we're slaves, and then we can't help.
When I was growing up, I come from a large family. There were 9 of us kids. I had one older brother that passed away when he was younger. But for the most part, my parents raised 8 of us. And so we didn't have, I'm not saying we lived in shack. We had homes. We had places to live. We had food. We had time together. And so I think growing up, I didn't realize that, that I wasn't rich. I didn't realize that I didn't have things that other kids had and so forth. And that type of thing. So as I grew up, as we got married, my wife came from probably a little better structure because there were only 3 in her family, 3 kids. And her parents were both working for the denomination. So, there was this little different. But even today, I used to, years ago, every 3 years, buy a new car. My cars are now about 20 years old, and I don't want them to die because I don't want to buy another new car. So I don't need these things. And, every once in a while I tell my wife, I says, I just need to go into the shop and sell everything I own in there. I don't need it. And then she convinces me I do need it. And because she figures I'm going to get good enough to go back and work in the shop again, and I'll be out of her hair. But But so there are these things, and we don't need much. We have a small house. We left a over 4,000 square foot home into a 1,600 square foot home, and even at that, I could live in about 3 rooms of that house and wouldn't need the rest of it. But she tells me, no, we got to have it for when the kids come. So, so I think it's the way we're brought up, because in society today, what is it that people look for to say that you are, these individuals that are, you've got it?
When Josh was growing up, we lived on 68 acres. And our home, we had youth camps. I would bring youth from everywhere. One time we had 60 kids at the house. We would take children in. The purpose of our home is to minister to. And I see many homes that are very nice, but they don't want company over.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of our home, is to minister. Like your wife said, when the kids come over, or someone else wants to come over, we have gotten rid of everything. Right now, we're in a fifth wheel. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of very wealthy people where I'm at who have realized that the homes mean nothing, and they're so happy in there. They got some real fancy fifth wheels, but they're all happy there, and they're realizing, hey, what was this for? And a lot of people that are not Christians are cutting back.
Right.
And you're free. You're free to give more. You're free to help. You're free to reach out. So we have learned the ways of the heathens, and we forget that we're only here for a mission, and we have rooted ourselves and lost our purpose. But everything that we have, our house, our car, is for ministry. It's not just to serve ourselves.
That's right. So, and so that's as we get into this, we are stewards of everything God gives us. That's all we are. We don't own it. And so, so when we look at this young man here who had it all, and he looks at this big crop that he's got, first of all, did he need it? No. I mean, he could have filled what he had and had much left over, but he wanted to keep it all. Who was he thinking about first? Himself. The same thing that started all this in the first place is Satan, Lucifer, thinking of himself.
Me, myself, and I.
Yeah. Okay. By doing this, he revealed to everyone around him his selfishness. Have you ever met somebody that thinks, what they're doing is good in their life, I have this, and so forth and so forth. And what you realize is that these individuals are selfish. They want it all. They want to keep it all. How many others could have benefited from this excess that he had? And that's what, as we look at things, as Christians, there's different aspects to look at this. We hear about Christians who give away everything they have. They don't keep anything. We have Christians who have enough that they live comfortably and they support all the different programs that they want to in the church or whatever. Then you have those that have, in our opinion, rich, and they support a lot of different things, and yet it seems like they always have money. So, as we look at that, how do we look at different individuals at these different states of giving their money or saving their money?
I think it has to do with our connection with God. And if we are so close to God and He impresses us, like He told the rich young ruler, sell all that you have and follow me, that's the appropriate thing to do.
Right.
And for some people, God is telling them that they should keep enough for retirement and save for retirement, and is leading them into different services. So I think loving God first helps us to do right with our money.
Okay, it's true. If we ask for the guidance from the Holy Spirit in our lives, they'll show us what we need to do. Now, how many of you know very rich Adventists? I do. Yeah. I also know what they do with their money. And they support so many different things, but yet through their business, it doesn't matter because they continue to grow the business. And they still have money to support more things. Let's face it. How many $1 million plus endowments or funds have gone to our universities from Adventists, to help with the education of our young people? So it depends on what we do. And it's just like the little parable of the 3 servants and the talents. If you do good, you'll be rewarded. If you do nothing, you're not rewarded. Is there anybody who cannot at least give their mite? Do you know anybody that wouldn't give the church a penny? You do. Yeah. 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 Right.
And I know he doesn't get it.
Right.
He said that.
So yes, so there are those individuals. And, even as a pastor in a church, sometimes you have to deal with these things. And trust me, pastors have it rough sometimes, guys. Especially when they begin to deal with problems with it in a church that's been going on for years and years and years. And so, to say that the church never has problems or that Christians never have problems, no, that's wrong. We all have our problems. And so we have to depend on the Spirit to lead and to guide us. It's not the fact that we have anything. What it boils down to is, what do we do with it when we have it? Are we being good stewards? Is it wrong to enjoy your retirement? I would hope not. After working 67 years or whatever, I'm hoping I can enjoy a little bit of retirement.
It's okay to enjoy their retirement, but if you look at the Bible, no one ever retired. Moses kept working. I live in a retirement community. They only live for themselves.
Yeah.
Most of them. They get up, they play tennis, they go in the pool, they go out to eat, they hang out in the evening, they drive the little golf carts. They live for themselves. There's nothing wrong with retirement, but as a Christian, our mindset is we are to minister to Christ until we die.
Okay.
So retirement means now you have more time to serve God when you didn't when you were working.
Right. And you can do that in different ways.
And there's nothing wrong with taking a vacation and retreating. Yeah. But when you live, I see them all the time. They live for themselves, and it's party every evening. And I used to think retirement community, their grandparents. No, let's get drunk and let's party and let's dance, and that's what they do. Right. They live selfishly.
So and then you can minister if you're not able, to go out or whatever. You can minister to your neighbors. You could minister to anybody you want. We've been working on our house a little bit because we have our little dog, and our back fence was falling apart, and she could get out through the holes in it and everything. So finally, we decided we need to replace that fence, and so we replaced the fence, and then our deck that's off the back of our house had some holes in it about yay big around, and the steps, she won't even let me walk down them. They were so bad, and so we decided, well, maybe we better put a new deck on because this one is rotting away, and you can't walk out the door and step on the ground. It's about 3 foot high. So, so we're doing that, and we were out yesterday because they finished it, and we're kind of looking, and our neighbor behind us, we had never seen him before. And now we could see, and he was over working in his yard, and he come over and he introduced himself, and we introduced ourselves, and he gave us his wife. Then he told us about the different neighbors down the road. So here's another thing that we now know most of the people on our street. I've met all of them, I think, but 2. And we have a house next door that a couple are going to be retiring, we think sometimes this year. He will be a retired Wesleyan minister. And we've already, when they come down, every time they come down, we always go out to eat together and things, and we, help each other and so forth. And so you can minister in everything you do, is basically what we're saying. And a lot of times, it's not so much we have to earnestly make ourselves go out, but it's just a matter of befriending someone close to you, someone you never met, a stranger, helping them, and that type of thing. And so, when it's all said and done, no matter what you have in this life, where is it going to go when you die? Somebody else. Yeah.
And sometimes it creates problems too.
The same brother that doesn't pay tithes and does the calling on Sabbath, his wife and I look at ourselves, we're like, God, don't strike him down to the pole, because we know he doesn't. He has a lot of money saved, and he's giving to his son, who's completely worldly, a penny should not fall into his hands. He won't give to the cause of God, but that's who he has it all. He's not even leaving it to his wife, to a reckless son. And it's hard to watch, but someone else is going to take it, enjoy it. So it's always good to give it away as they're living. If your child needs it now, why do they have to wait until you die to get it?
Right.
And that's a concept, misguiding concept.
As we were talking with our tax man this year, he mentioned to us, the way taxes are going and so forth, if you have anything left over, chances are there's not going to be much left by the time the taxes and everything are paid on it. So he says, you need to see a lawyer, you need to set up trust funds. And then you can funnel off a little bit of money each year into those trust funds, which can't be taxed. So, there are ways to do this to still be, even after you're gone, to still make sure that your money is being used in the right way. The story, when it says you can't take it with you, some of the text there in Monday's lesson says we're like vapors. You know what a vapor looks like? How? It depends on how much it's blowing, on how long it lasts. If you have a steam kettle on the stove and it steam's coming out of it, that vapor, how far does it go before it begins to dissipate? Not too far, you may get them up yay far or whatever. But you've also seen in factories and things where they have the big stacks and the stuff goes out and it trails for a long ways. But eventually, it disappears. And so, the Bible is telling us that's what we're like. It doesn't matter how old you are. For one thing, right now, nobody will ever live on this earth from now to the end of time that will live as long as Methuselah did. And, you know, if I had to live almost 1,000 years in this world today, yeah. Can you imagine that? I don't think we'd make it. So we need to look at what we're doing. We need to be deliberate on what we do with our money once we are gone. You know, I've read this. I don't know if you've ever read this little thing, but every once in a while I'll see it. Somebody puts it up, but it says, a very rich man, told his wife he wanted every bit of his money put into his casket with him. She was not to have anything. And so just before they closed the casket, she placed a check into the casket with the amount of money he had, and they closed it and buried it. So he was buried with his money, but he'll never cash it. You know, so when we look at life and we see how quickly it goes, you know, how many of you, when your kids were growing up, you go, wow, how did it get that big so quick? Huh? Grandkids, you know, I've got grandkids taller than I am now. And so it doesn't take long for things to grow up and to disappear. And so, you know, so one of the things is, and I never thought about this, but as our lesson pointed out, but do you know what it would take to support your family? If you were a young parent and you had several young children, do you know what it would take for them to live comfortably if something happens to you?
I have a lot of faith, and I believe a lot in the power of prayer. When I was Jehovah's Witness when I became a Seventh-day Adventist. I learned about homeschooling. We lived in a city in Tampa, and I prayed for a place in the country. I didn't have the funds, and God miraculously provided it without us having to down. The 68 acres that I raised my children belonged to a doctor, and I started praying for it. And they rented it to us, and then I put a brand new mobile home on it for only $100 a month. Because I put God first and my children first, I've been able to see that He can take care of us above and beyond what we ask for. So we cannot rely on our money. You know, we don't know. He will provide the funds. You know, it was a lot for me to quit my job and homeschool my children, but He gave me above and beyond because I took that step of faith, and then I saw Him providing for me. And then that same doctor gave me a part-time job, only 4 hours a day. I could leave the kids doing school, come right back, and I made $1,056 a week only working 4 hours a day. When we take that step, then we can see God's miracle. I believe in budgeting. I learned that from my parents. I believe in learning, but I also know how, and that's where we have got to learn this in the little bit of time that we have, because everything is going to hit rock bottom, and none of us are going to have any money, and our faith is what's going to carry us.
But you mentioned there, you did your part. Yeah, you did your part. You know, so in, you know, if I were to say, okay, God, I'm going to give all my money away, and I'm not going to keep anything. I'm not going to do anything. Take care of me. Do you think He will?
No.
He could. He could. You know, is it presumptuous for some of us to do that?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Right, right, where they gave everything that they had. So yes.
One moment.
Lady is saying about at the end of time, and I think it's probably addressed more in next week's
Right.
lesson. We're not going to have anything, and we have to have that mindset of being able to live without anything and depend on God, because at that time He is calling us to live without nothing and to trust Him for that. So, yes, I believe that in some instances, as she's describing, God was calling her to live without anything, to live in a certain way. And all that has to happen is that we obey God in what He's calling us to do. And it would be different for me, for you, for her. We all have to obey Him. And in some instances, it's to live with nothing.
It's just like the story of Job. He lost everything. Absolutely everything, and yet the faith that Job had. Right. Right, right. So, and everything that we do pertains to, when we're talking about stewardship, it pertains to our relationship with God. We don't go it alone. We don't own anything. It's God's. We simply are there to hold it and use it as He would have us to do. Okay, I want to thank you all for your comments today, and it's time now to close our lesson study time out, so let's have a word of prayer. Father, again, we thank you for the opportunity we have to come here to delve into your Bible and to study in your word. And Father, help each of us in our own lives to listen for that calling, what you would have us to do in our lives for you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Like a candle to the sun, your light is brighter than mine. Like a servant and the master, my ways can't compare to yours. Like the question and the answer, your wisdom tells it all. Close to you is where I'd rather be. Close to you is where I'd rather be. Your embrace is what I need, my life on you to build, and my needs for sure you shall meet. At your time I'll be complete. Jesus, wrap me in your arms, the same ones bruised for me. Close to you is where I'd rather be. Close to you is where I'd rather be. Where all my flaws are known, and your grace still shown to me. All imperfections brought before you, so I can grow. my need for life that only you can give. Close to you is where I find my comfort, knowing I am loved. Close to you is where I see my need for life that only you can give me. And close to